Hey guys, hope everybody is nice and cozy with a loved one, feeling good. And maybe it's time for you to just sit back and enjoy yourself and watch a good video. And what I want to show you tonight is very important. If you believe in self government, if you believe in the Republic, and you believe in the founding principles of checks and balances, then you understand that local elections matter. Local elections matter, folks. And lately I've been seeing political signs as I'm driving around, and I noticed that, I don't know what these people look like, let alone what they stand for. So, what I wanted to do is reach out to some of these folks, county commissioners, district attorney, board of education, and Onslow County sheriff. These are some of the offices at a local level that are up for grabs this fall. Now we're coming into a season of primaries, so this spring, I believe it's May 17th. There's an election for the primary between the Republican candidates for Onslow County Sheriff, and if you're like me, you know that the sheriff's office is the final check and balance at the local level before it gets to you for law enforcement at the county level. And it's so important in a constitutional republic. So I decided to reach out to some of these candidates. I just got off the phone with Colonel Thomas. I'm going to be conducting an interview with him very shortly. And today, I had the chance to sit down with a young man who is running for sheriff, and his name is Jake Donnenwirth. And I want you guys to know right out the gate that this is not an endorsement of any candidate or any candidate's committee or any political party or whatever. This is just for your benefit. I want to get the information out there so you guys can make an informed decision, because local elections matter. Local elections matter. So, take it for what it is. I know y'all missed me, and I miss some of you too. So, here's the interview. Jake Donnenwirth for Onslow County Sheriff, and hopefully coming soon, Colonel Thomas, and whoever else at a local level would like to meet with me and talk about some of the issues that are important to you guys, namely constitutional freedom, concealed carry, purchase permits, the kind of crap that people have to go to the sheriff's office for, things like that. So I hope you guys enjoy the video, and let me know if you got any comments, if you got any questions for this young man or anyone else that I interview. Just put it in the box below. Please like and subscribe. If this is on YouTube, I don't know if I'm gonna put it on YouTube yet. If it's on my channel, I appreciate the likes and subscriptions. So, without further ado, Jake Donnenwirth.
Okay.
Hey guys, what's up? My name's Andrew. I'm a firearms instructor, NRA certified, certified with the Department of Justice of North Carolina to teach the use of deadly force, otherwise known as concealed carry. And we also do advanced courses in private instruction. But one thing we talk about in class that's so important is not only this document, the Constitution, something that I can carry in my pocket, all right? Easy enough for the common man to read and understand, but how important local elections are. And we're coming into a part of the season where we see signs up everywhere. And I was just driving by and, I see signs up and I realized, holy smokes, there's an election coming up. It's very important for everyone to be informed. How often do you pass by a sign and you see someone's name and you don't even know what they look like? So I reached out to one of the candidates running for Onslow County Sheriff. And I've got Jacob Donnenwirth here, who agreed to come and answer some questions, just have a sit down between two Onslow County residents, and he's running for the office of sheriff. And I want to be clear that this is not an endorsement of Jacob, of his campaign, or of any candidate right now. Last week, I met with Colonel Thomas, and I thought he was a very professional, he just straight up looking him in the eye, he looked like a good dude. We didn't talk politics or anything like that, but I'd like to reach out to him or anybody else that's willing to meet and just talk about some issues. So, with that being said, Jacob, if you want to start off and just tell us a little bit about who you are and your background,
absolutely.
man. Yeah.
Absolutely. So my name's Jake Donnenwirth, originally from northern New York State, up in the Adirondack Mountains outside the Syracuse area. Went to RIT, got my degree in criminal justice out there in western New York, Joined the Marine Corps. I was a combat engineer officer for 6 years. Then I got out after having been a company commander there, and then since then I've been doing some contracting, both for private security guys doing combatives and self-defense, and a little bit of subcontracting for the Navy, teaching some firearms instructor trainer stuff. And this year I'm running for sheriff in an atypical platform, because I'm looking at the office of the sheriff and the fact that it's elected and not appointed, and that it's getting treated like an appointed position in a government agency instead of that election. So I'm running because I'm looking at it and thinking, well, wait a minute, if this is an election, then it's supposed to be representative of the people that live there. And what I see right now is kind of a continuation of expertise from an agency, which is different from being representative of people. And I think it's a good opportunity to reinsert checks and balances as far as like, hey, I'm a regular person who lives in this county, with leadership experience from the Marine Corps. It's that point of view should be somewhere in what is essentially the local executive branch of government, in my opinion, because you can't really represent someone who you don't share a problem-solving framework with, is how I like to put it. If you and I look at a problem and diagnose and solve it kind of the same way, because we're both regular people, I think that may be different if you've been doing one job like law enforcement for 35 years. You might be, the absolute best investigator, drug task force runner type guy, but are you going to solve and look at problems the same as a regular person? It doesn't make you bad, but it's not the same. And representative, I think, doesn't capture that as part of it. So that's why I'm running.
Okay, that's awesome. Pause it real quick.
No.
Okay, very informal here today. I just paused it real quick, get a drink, talking about how old Jacob is. We're roughly the same age. We're in our early 30s. So, I mean, yeah, that's a good starting point. And, one of the reasons that I think the sheriff's office is so important is because you talk about being an average person. I think that for the average law-abiding person, the number one thing that you have to interact with the sheriff's office with, from what I can tell, outside of criminal cases or anything like that, or, snitching on your neighbor, right? We've had that issue before. People calling the sheriff's office out here. Well, the number one thing that people have to deal with the sheriff's office is purchase permits and concealed carry applications, right? Now, you're originally from New York, and the gun laws in New York are much stricter than down here in North Carolina.
18 months to get my concealed carry.
18 months,
with
yeah.
an interview with the sheriff. And the way it works, not that this is important for anyone in North Carolina, except for me to tell you don't go to New York, because it's insane. But when you buy a gun,
right,
you have to have your permit already. And that is just to purchase a pistol. You have to have a carry permit. And that's either unrestricted or restricted based on what the judge feels like in your county. So you can get a carry permit because it's necessary for you to own a gun. So you still have to go through the 18-month process to get your carry permit, to then be able to go buy a pistol and then have it marked restricted. It says recreational purpose only.
Wow.
So you're technically not allowed to carry it unless you're on your way to go hunt or on your way to the range.
Yeah.
Then when you buy a gun, which once you get your permit, you have to buy one, I think within 6 months to put it on, or it goes inactive and you have to start some part of the process over again.
Wow.
Let's say, I'm going to buy a gun from you because you're the FFL. I go pay you. I take the receipt that has the gun, make, model, serial number on it, and then I've paid you. I bring it to the sheriff's office. They print me a new carry permit that now includes that gun. And now that I have a carry permit that includes that gun, I can come back and pick it up from you.
Wow.
Like, that's the process for just buying a pistol in New York State. Not to mention all the SAFE Act restrictions.
And you're from a western county, right?
Right, yeah, so I'm up in the mountains.
New York, yeah. Western counties are a little bit more red. If you know those kind of politics.
We're like the same distance from New York City that we are from Charlotte here in Onslow County.
Yeah.
Like, not even geographically. Thankfully, geographically very far away from who we like to refer to as the city. It's
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and politically too, geographically and politically. Well, that being said, what I tell people in my class is that just like New York, North Carolina infringes on your Second Amendment. That's my belief. They do. All right, if you look at these concealed carry laws and purchase permit laws, it puts the power of a right, turns it into a privilege, and now the sheriff can deny or approve your ability to conceal a weapon on your person or in a vehicle. It also means that they have the ability to approve or deny you just purchasing a handgun.
Right.
You know, which is ridiculous. I mean, and I know this is a state issue, but, you know, people, like, for instance, they come to my class, they pay me under $100 to take a concealed carry course, well under $100, and then they have to go to the sheriff's office, and they pay another $100 for an application, and then they wait. And then the purchase permits, you get 5 of them per handgun. So, you know, the whole thing here is that the sheriff, I believe, has too much power when it comes to your Second Amendment rights. And I just want to know what your viewpoint is on that.
Yeah, I mean, you hit it in the fact that it's a state issue, unfortunately, but really what I think sheriffs should be doing is taking the shall issue as far as they can. Instead of, you know, not may issue, but shall issue. You know, it's like, hey, the state says this is all the stuff that you have to do to be able to do it.
Right.
Okay, well then meet those bare minimums and get them done. Get them out there. Streamline it as fast as possible. Because at the end of the day, you're absolutely right. You hit the nail on the head. It is a right. You have the right to self-protection guaranteed through the Second Amendment. You know, it's a God-given guaranteed through the Second Amendment. Sheriffs should be doing everything they can to streamline that. And, you know, I'm not going to sit here and say, like, well, I know how they do it down at Onslow County,
right.
And, you know, here are the things that I'm going to change, because I don't work there, you know what I mean? But what I would like to do, you know, my slogan's challenge the norm, just get in there. That's one of the things that I would like to take a look at is, you know, are there any extra steps in this process? If so, why? There's state requirements. If they meet them, get them. Get it out. Push them out.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I'll tell you right now that that's been an issue that's come up. Because I've taught people in different counties. I've taught people in Carteret, Jones, you know, Duplin, all that. And I've had to call every sheriff's office. Okay, and this is an issue I've had with the incumbency. Is that out of all the counties in eastern North Carolina, after I called every sheriff's office, the one that had the longest wait, this past, when was it, honey? This past summer was I calling?
Yes.
I had people complaining about wait time, so I called every sheriff's office. And Onslow County, by far, had the longest wait time. Okay? And I know the office of the sheriff has other things going on, but for the average law-abiding citizen, this is like, to me, it's unacceptable to have people like a single mom, okay, with kids, or a husband's deployed, she's waiting to carry legally, and she has to wait 6 months, pay $200. Like, that's ridiculous. Okay, so that's one of my main issues coming in this election, and I think, you know, you understanding that, you recognize that. Maybe you could feel the pulse of the people on that. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, 100%. And really, you know, like I said, I can't say enough that, you know, I see that because, you know, I know people that are buying guns or, you know, are active duty, so they come here and sometimes ask me questions about what it's like to get the concealed carry. And it's one of those things where, you know, I'm not crapping on how they're running things down there because I don't know what the ins and outs are. But you know, it may have something to do with the population or the turnover because, you know, there's so many military people coming in. Also, the last couple of years have just been crazy. You know,
yes.
Very fortunately, not locally. They haven't been very crazy, but, you know, close enough to, like, you know, there was some out in Raleigh, some down in Wilmington where it's like, well, this is some scary stuff. Maybe, even though I haven't owned a pistol before, I want to get one.
Right.
So I think some of those things could be playing into what you're talking about. But absolutely, it should be. It should be something that's very, very easy to get done because it's a right, not a privilege.
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah. What's up? You need pause? Are you rolling? Yeah, we paused it because the 2-year-old was being bad. We were just talking.
That's just being two, not being bad.
Yeah.
Being two.
Thank you. He appreciates that. All right. Well, we're talking about just hunting and stuff. He showed me a picture of this deer he killed up in New York with a revolver. That's a big plus with me. I like revolvers.
Yeah, you told me you were a revolver guy. I said, here, we're going to get along. I sent you that picture. Yeah,
that's right.
Get along swell.
Yeah, we're talking about wildlife. Said 10 million kills.
Yeah. So I have a Glock 20 that I put a Holson on. I got 2 last year. The first one I thought was a doe. We just had this little tiny one single knuckle in between his ears there that I just couldn't see at 30 yards in the woods, you know?
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, that's a decent sized doe for North Carolina. So I shot him and got over there and I was like, sorry, buddy. I would have let you go. I didn't see this like tiny little nub there.
Nothing you can do about that, Jacob.
No.
Nothing.
No.
That 10 mil took him down pretty good.
The hollow point didn't even open up, man. Just straight laser beam straight through. I was running the SIG, like VTAC or whatever they call them, 180 grain hollow points. And it was same size entry and exit. It was like a Star Wars gun. I was like,
Wow.
yeah,
That's pretty
yeah.
good.
So that to me was like, okay, yeah, I should probably not concealed carry a 10 mil. Like in the winter when you can get away with it because you're wearing a jacket or whatever. It's like, I can carry a bigger gun. It's not that big a deal.
Yeah.
It's like, no, man. Unless you're shooting it, like, I don't know, unless you get mugged by the Rock. It's definitely going to do some damage coming out the other side. So
that's interesting. I'm a 357 Magnum guy. That's what I carry, so I kick it old school. 10 mil is good. Jacob's a gun guy. All right, I'm learning about him right now. Very informal. We're learning about him. What other issues do you think are really important right now?
So
to you in this county? Yeah, man.
One of the big things that again, I'm hesitant to call it an issue, but it's something that I want to take a deep dive on. Is what's the training like in the sheriff's office for the deputies? Because I have my brother's a police officer up in New York State, outside of Albany, and I have several other people that I worked with in the military or that I did martial arts with growing up that are police officers. And if you look at what their training is, and on the spectrum of how often they have to do something like that, from like, I do this every day, to God, I hope this doesn't happen. You have like verbal arguments and de-escalation on this side, and you got shootings over here, and somewhere in the middle you got hands-on, right? Whether it's a fist fight or whether it's arresting somebody. And everything that I see is the verbal de-escalation type stuff. You get told, hey, this is important, make sure you do that, and then you never train it. And in the middle, you do, defensive tactics. And some of the real good departments do some training like that once a year, or maybe quarterly if they're awesome, right? But then I have the question of what training is it? Are you doing only BJJ to where people are going to be more comfortable going to the ground than standing up? And there's that big misnomer of, well, fights usually go to the ground. And it's like, yes, people that you don't train how not to go to the ground go to the ground. But like you've created that in a vacuum, right? To where now you could be putting people in danger by just not fact checking, like, hey, does this work under pressure? Have we pressure tested this? Craig Douglas likes to use that term. I like it a lot. I've trained with him. Highly recommend it if you haven't taken Craig Douglas' course. Like, the dude's a stud.
I haven't heard of him. What does he teach?
So he owns ShivWorks and does the ECQC, Extreme Close Quarter Concepts course, which is fighting in a weapons environment.
Okay.
So he teaches that, and then he has some specific knife courses, and he trains LEOs all over the country.
He's a local guy.
No, I think he's down in Louisiana or Alabama, somewhere down south. But yeah, definitely check him out.
Okay.
Great courses. So then you have, what are you doing for actually hands-on, fighting, defensive tactics, whatever you want to call it. And is that pressure tested, or is it just, whatever the fad was? Like we, dealt with McMap, right? Which is if you, in a vacuum, train from tan belt to black belt before you ever got in a fight, okay, that's better than not knowing anything. But until you get to like brown belt, it's basically like Karate Kid stuff where, he's going to try to wax on and get his stuff handed to him until you have hundreds of hours into it. And it's like, well, why don't we teach something that's immediately accessible because it's based on how the body reacts under stress, and not like, oh, well, I saw this on TV, or it's cool. Or I used to be SF and this worked for me when I was a professional athlete and I trained to it, so let me help you, average guy. And then all the way over here on the spectrum, so we got verbal de-escalation, happens every day, they never do it. Hands-on training happens more. Hopefully it doesn't happen very often, but I don't even know what the content of that stuff is or how often they train it. And then over here, we have the weapons qual, which I put the teaser video out this week. I get the full episode coming out. But you need a 70% to pass, 80% to be private security, 92% to be an instructor on that daytime BLET qual.
Right.
And we're talking 12 shots in 60 seconds at the 25-yard line. Talking 12 shots in 30 seconds at the 15-yard line, 20 seconds at the 7-yard line. It's like we're not, because of the military, I have questions. What are the techniques that are being taught for actually how to manipulate the weapon, not just being taught, hey, go ahead and shoot, and then if you miss, I'll tell you missed, right? But like, how are you controlling the trigger? There's stuff that you can relate to, right?
Yeah.
As an instructor, you look at it and you're like, are you an evaluator or are you a teacher? Like, can I actually watch you manipulate the weapon and give you techniques on how to manipulate it better to be faster and more accurate? Or am I just saying like, hey, you were down and left, so you're probably anticipating. And it's like, well, maybe. Or maybe it's their trigger. Or, maybe it actually is their sights for the first time in 30 years, right? You don't really know.
Yeah.
So because I have a lot of experience in that, I want to know what's the actual techniques that are being taught, and is there, how often are we doing that in comparison to the other things? Is that what's most important when we could be using that time to fight, or is that most important compared to being able to verbally de-escalate? Because I mean, your brain's a muscle, right? If you actually put effort into it and spent 10 minutes, once a week, where your job is to be mad no matter what, and my job is not to allow it to get physical. Like, you can just play stump the chump with me and practice, actual things that you guys have seen out there. And now all of a sudden, you get out of it what you put into it. Obviously, if we just mess around, we don't take that seriously, you're not going to get anything out of it. But that's something that you can do to actually keep you on your toes, and that's something that when I'm teaching self-defense, is one of the first things that we do is verbal de-escalation and body posturing. So, how often is that done to set officers and deputies up for success to where they don't show up with an expectation of being in charge and having a problem with people who don't see them that way, but they show up with the skill set and with the mentality of de-escalating if at all possible, right? And obviously, it's like anything in the ROE, just because it exists doesn't mean you have to hit every step, because the situation obviously dictates. You can't show up and try to talk someone down who's currently firing a gun, obviously, but...
that's interesting. That's stuff that, that's outside of... so the sheriff's deputies, the way that they're running training, as far as I know, BLET qual, all that's coming from Raleigh.
Mm-hmm.
All that stuff. I've had to run it too, PPSB,
right.
Doing a BLET qual, right? So 80%, like you said, 70% for officers, all that stuff. Do you see there being a problem in Onslow County with the sheriff's deputies?
Like I said,
are you bringing that up?
No,
okay.
but I know from the police world that training is one of those things, like it is in the Marine Corps. From talking to everybody I know that is a police officer or a deputy in other parts of the country, training's just a check in the box. Like, we have to do that so the department can't get sued, and I can't get sued for being out of standards or whatever. And it's like, are we setting officers and deputies up for success by sending them out there with the appropriate tools to not have to end up having to pull their taser, end up having to pepper spray somebody, end up having to shoot somebody, or are we sending them out there without any of those tools leading up to that, to where now they have to pull their gun, they don't have any other tools that they're adequate at using, and then what are you going to do when you get your bluff called when you're holding the gun? Like, you already didn't have anything else in your hand, so you pulled your gun out, and now, if you get stuck making a terrible decision, like, you still made that decision, but the department is also liable for the fact that they should have given you something other than a gun, and like, hey man, I hope you don't have to use this, like, let's make sure we qual every year.
Right.
Do I see any problems with that locally? No, all the interactions that I've had with the local guys, de-escalation has been great. Obviously I haven't fought any of them because it's not how I roll. But
I haven't heard of any deadly force incidents within the department or any escalation force that's come to the news at all.
Yeah.
But that's interesting. Okay, so that's...
Well, it just begs the question, like, is that by good fortune or by design? And again, challenge the norm being my slogan. I want to take a look at that. Do I think that there's a problem? No. If I find a problem, is that something that has to be dealt with before there's like an emergency? Yeah, 100%. Because the penalties for not taking that seriously are so grave, right? Okay. And it's like we definitely don't want Onslow to be the next place on the map like Kenosha was. Right. So
sure.
How do you and it's not just to protect officers or deputies either, right? Because if someone shows up, I don't know, let's say I got in an argument with my neighbor and he called the cops because he was mad, but there hadn't been any laws broken, right? Police officer or sheriff's deputy shows up and we get in an argument because the cop, they got called on me, but I'm like, dude, I didn't break any laws. If he's not there to de-escalate, this is immediately going to be, bad for all parties involved. Because I'm right, he's right because he has authority, and neither one of us want to back down. Right. If someone isn't there to de-escalate, then it's going to escalate. That's just the nature of how things work.
Yeah,
right?
And that's been a problem nationwide. I've seen it, and look, I'm no expert on law enforcement rules of engagement, but I've seen it more of a problem in police departments. I would say I don't know if there's any issue with the sheriff's deputies here, but you're right. You want to kind of make sure that there isn't.
Right.
And I do kind of resent the fact that sometimes the ROEs are a little excessive, in different instances we see across the country. Maybe doesn't apply here, but coming from my background, being deployed, you have rules of engagement, and when you see a police officer putting hands on somebody that has dementia and throwing them to the ground and stuff like that. I kind of resent that. All right, but I don't think that's an issue here.
No, and like I said, I can't say enough that. Do I have any specific these guys are so terrible because no, I think they're doing a great job.
Yeah.
Like they're kicking butt and taking names around here, and every interaction that I've had with them has been highly professional.
Right.
But that's one of those fire extinguisher things, right? It's like, well, we didn't have one because there'd never been a fire. Well, I bet you wish you had one now that you're standing where your house used to be, and it was just in the kitchen when it started.
Right.
Right. So that's one of those things, like, you have to take your training seriously, because if it's just a check in the box, if it's just a liability thing so the department can't get sued or whatever, then you're really missing the boat on providing better service to the community and making sure that the officers and deputies stay safe as well.
So if I had to kind of and correct me if I'm wrong, if I kind of had to put it in a nutshell, what you're standing for here is that you want to take the sheriff's office and remind people that this is more of a political office that belongs to the people versus purely for law enforcement.
Yes.
Okay, that's what you're going for. Now,
Yes.
I see there being two detriments to your campaign in that regard. Is that, well, first of all, you're a Yankee like me. All right, that's a detriment around here. Maybe. Maybe.
I was a Yankee.
Yeah, it was a
I
Yankee.
left.
Just
Yeah.
like me. Okay, we got to work on our southern accent. But really, I think people. And don't take offense to this, but I think people they want some law enforcement experience because of the amount of drugs that have come through Onslow County.
Right.
It seems like there's an increase in that. And I want to get your take on that. The amount of drugs that have been coming through Onslow County. If you look on their Facebook page, there's constant. We're talking about fentanyl, we're talking about a lot of cocaine, things that, for a while there hadn't been an issue. It seems to be coming back. Homicide, missing person cases, things of that nature, and and I know you kind of touched on this earlier, but what's your response to that? That being your biggest detriment, not having law enforcement experience.
So the response to that really is I think that is looking at the office of the sheriff as being primarily law enforcement oriented and inherently political. But I see it as the other way around, where it's supposed to be primarily political and it's just inherently law enforcement oriented, right? Yeah. So, if you look at the department or the office, right, which actually the difference between office and department is something that I learned from Colonel Thomas like 2 weeks ago, right? Because I called the sheriff's department correctly. So remind me, I'll come back to that, right?
I got corrected on that too. Never called a department.
Yeah. So, but that's important, and I want to come back to it. And I did just learn that from him a couple weeks ago, and I got no problem saying that. But if there's let's say there's around 300 people that are working there at the sheriff's office.
Yep, 300.
So,
yeah.
So we're looking at, if the average amount of experience is 3 or 4 years, we're looking at over 1,000 years of experience. This is a guy at the top who is an elected official, right? So I already said I think that's supposed to be representative. If that guy doesn't add another 20, 30, 40 years to that existing 1,000, shouldn't that not matter? That's my question. Because if you look at, where do those guys go get, guys and gals, where do they go get their certifications from? Well, they go to the Justice Academy, right?
Right.
Or they're training with the state police, the state Justice Academy, going to federal courses to get their certifications. And I think that there's just this kind of assumption that the sheriff is the one who certifies all that. But really, his job is try to figure out what are not so much answering all the questions, but try to figure out what are the questions that have to be asked. And then from there, being able to represent the people and say, hey, this is what the average Joe thinks and is worried about, liaising with the law enforcement experts that have been doing it for so long, and then say, like, hey, based on this, what do you guys think? And if there's an answer that doesn't coincide with what's going to be good for us as regular people, that's where it's important to have that outside mindset to say, well, hang on, did you think about this? Right? So, yes, I get that's always the first question that I get, right? It's like, what's your law enforcement experience? So it's like, well, I got my degree in criminal justice, but that's really just to try to understand the law enforcement world, which I also have from, again, not being in it, I've never carried a badge, but, that job, in my opinion, is supposed to be more liaison, more, hey, what does the community need? Take an outside kind of independent consultant auditor role and making sure that everything's going in the right direction. Asking the right questions more than having all the answers. Because, all the certifications come from outside the office anyway. So
that's kind of your view of and I tell people this in my class.
Yeah.
The constitutional role of the sheriff's office is so important. True or false?
Oh yeah. 100%.
Yeah. And
100%.
how do you see that in a constitutional role between the checks and balances between what we got at the federal level, the state, and then you come down to the local level? You got these checks and balances. You've got judges, sheriff, and you've got district attorney. These are very important in a constitutional role.
Right.
Yeah.
No, 100%. So, the way that I see it, and this isn't even, some weird interpretation, is the sheriff's office is the local executive branch. So, where's the checks and balances if, there's someone who's been in the sheriff's office for, 20, 30, 40 years, if they then go directly into this elected office as a shoo-in, maybe nothing bad happens, but again, that's not representative. That would be the same as saying like, hey, the director of the FBI or the head of the CIA or the top military general, they're a shoo-in to be the president. Because, obviously they've been doing these things that involve the security of the nation so well for the last 20, 30, 40 years. That's just what we're going to do. We're going to hold an election. But really, we all know the right answer is this guy who's been really good at doing this thing in the executive branch of government in an agency for so long. And I think that, again, not that I have any issues with what's going on in Onslow County, but it does provide a blind spot, which is what does the average person think? And in this whole executive branch, where is the average person's opinion being inserted there? And right now, I don't see it.
Okay. All right. Okay, pause that real quick. Hey, we were just having a discussion. We had to pause it. We're back on. We kind of got off topic.
Yeah, we're just now we're talking about how to streamline kind of what we were talking about earlier
with concealed carry
and purchase permits.
If we could be more specific about it, it's kind of difficult if we can't pinpoint exactly what the problem is. Sometimes, I have this idea that I think the people in the office could be doing something better. It could be a piece of equipment. It could be hiring more people. I don't know for sure. All I know is that other counties are doing it faster, including counties that have a more, they have a bigger population and just as many people applying, as far as I know. Okay, but
like I was saying, it's like there's, I'm cautious to throw stones because I'm not down there,
sure.
like seeing
what
the input is, So, could you hire temps during the summer to do that? Because I typically think that. If you have a problem and then you make a permanent government job to solve that problem, that government job is now incentivized never to solve the problem, or they lose their job. Right. So I don't. That's probably not the answer. But in times of influx, could you hire temps? Maybe. Like, what's the software they're using? Is that faster, slower? Is it all the same state issue? But the computers are older. It's like there could be a million different things that go into it.
But as long as you're saying that you're going to do something.
Right. Right,
it's like to do something to make.
Again, I'm gonna beat this challenge the norm horse to death.
Okay.
It's like ask the hard questions, like what are we doing? What's the process like? Can it be better? Maybe there is a reason that it is how it is, and they've been trying, but something's held up in funding or microprocessor chips, or something's in a shipping container off the coast of California. Who knows, right?
Okay.
But really, it's that. What I'm trying to do is just bring in that outside set of eyes, independent consultant, auditor type opinion to like, hey, what are we doing? Can it be better? If you look at, that's why the business world outpaces government, right? It's like there's no industry in which capitalism can't solve a problem better than a government.
Absolutely.
Right. So really, I think that's why I think it's so healthy to take someone who is not of the system to then, take a look at things and say, hey, you could do this more efficiently. This could be faster. This could be cleaner. This is one of those jobs and this is something that people hate to see, and the elections get lost over. It's like, oh, you're killing jobs, right? And it's like, well, if we created this job to solve a problem and then the problem got solved, we still have the job. It's because we've incentivized them not to solve the problem.
That's actually
right?
a good segue right here to another question. I'm just going to jump into it. All right. So he's running as a Republican, all right? And we're talking about other issues here. What kind of Republican are you? And, there could be some division within the party.
Yeah.
All right, what kind of Republican do you see yourself as in that regard?
So I see myself as, and anyone with access to public records can see this, but I was registered as a libertarian before I decided I was going to run for sheriff. So I'm more conservative up to the point where I disagree with kind of what's going on with the left and the right now, where if you pick a subject, one side says it should be mandatory and the other side says it shouldn't be allowed. Right? That's kind of the stance that both major platforms are taking right now. On any given issue, it's like, no, this has to be mandatory because you have to do it, it's good for you. And someone else is like, no, it can't be allowed because it's bad for your soul, or whatever, right? And I think...
Talking about vaccines. You're talking about COVID stuff, right?
Vaccines, it's like even abortion, it's like we can agree that it's wrong, but we can also... and this is probably something that's going to get me in trouble with the hardcore Republican voters. That's why, I lean towards more libertarian, It's like, hey, should we be trying to convince doctors to do the right thing? Yes. Like, should you, institute, government control over any medical procedure? Boy, that's getting into some weird territory, right? Because, the same people that are my body, my choice are now no longer my body, my choice with the vaccine, and vice versa, right? So there's a lot of weird stuff that goes into... So vaccine
mandates, we'll just go straight into it.
Dude, that's a terrible idea.
Terrible idea, okay.
And like I said, with some of the other topics, it's one of those things where it shouldn't be mandatory and it shouldn't be not allowed. It should be, hey, you're an adult, do research, make decisions. And
what about masks? How do you feel about that?
Well, the thing about masks is that they help like 9%. That's like the best studies show that they help like 9%, which is like, hey, make sure you wear your athletic supporter on your motorcycle. Like, that's the same amount of protection that they provide. So it's like, does it make enough of a difference for anyone to be upset about it? I can't see why. It's like, I understand the if it helps a little mindset, but again, then you get into the mandatory, and it's like, dude, it only helps a little. Why is it mandatory? Okay. Well, every little bit helps. It's like, yeah, but it doesn't help 91%. So where's the common sense in that,
How about, and I'm just going to go right
Yeah, man, have at it.
We go vaccines, we go masks, Donald Trump. How do you feel? Are you a Trump Republican?
I voted for Trump both times. No, sorry, the first one I missed the absentee. I voted for him the second time, but, that's one of those things where it's like, you can't complain if you don't vote. I've been doing a lot of complaining since 2020. But no, I think that he was good for the country because he was not a politician, right? So, he got in there, he looked at things from a business mindset, and he was like, hey, does this make sense? Does this not? I think he did the you're fired too much. But whatever, it is what it is. I would vote for him again. Would I invite him over for dinner? No, I don't think, personally, I don't think we would get along. I don't think there's anything that we would talk about and share interest in. But I like what he did as the president. Yeah, that's how I feel about Trump. And, when I see a Trump sign in somebody's yard while I'm out canvassing, I'm like, I'm stopping here because I know we agree on at least one thing.
Yeah, you don't know. You might get along with Trump. I don't know. I've never met the man, but, I kind of feel like he'd be all right here, man. And, he's walking with the castle. Yeah, my buddy Matt up in Virginia said that he did some campaigning and canvassing for Trump in 2016. Yeah.
And... he said that he met him, and then 8 months later, he saw him again, and Trump remembered his name.
Is that right?
And he was like, dude, I'm telling you, he's a regular dude. And it's like, well, Matt, I believe you, but, I guess I'm also a victim of what I see on the TV all the time, where I look at how he interacts with people and the way he does things, and I'm like, I don't know if I'd invite him over. But I'll vote for him again, for sure.
That's fun.
So.
All right. So, I'm just trying to go through some issues here. People... libertarian, I tend to lean kind of libertarian as well, except on the abortion issue. I'm staunchly pro-life. I mean, I kind of get the feeling that you're looking at it more like a medical procedure instead of a human life. I mean, that's important.
Yeah, and
this isn't an issue that really a sheriff has to deal with.
It has nothing to do with that.
Really...
So, but no, it's like, I think that once the government is allowed to take control over what people do with their bodies, it's like, that... Where's the hard line, and it gets kind of scary as far as setting stages. So now, how do I want to phrase this? If you give the government a whole lot of control over what they can do to you, with you, and for you, and then the opinion of who's at the top changes, you're now stuck with all the control you gave the last guy, right? And we're seeing that. That's one of the best arguments against all the stuff that people are excited that Joe Biden's doing. It's whoever's pulling those strings, right. I guess, is look, if you want the government to be able to decide these issues for you in your life, how are you going to feel when some Republican is president next, and the president swings the other way, and now they have the ability to tell you what you're going to do with your body, but their opinion instead of your opinion.
Yeah, that's
so
exactly
it's
what's
like,
happening.
do I think that it's a good, like, no, I'm not pro-abortion, right? But at the same time, like, should the government be making decisions for everybody? Like, that should be outside the government's control for what they're doing.
Right.
So
that's what we're
don't
seeing
wanna
with
say,
vaccines and masks and all that
exactly.
stuff as well.
So, it's like I don't want anyone to think that I'm pro-abortion or pro-choice, but at the same time, it's like we have to draw a line on what the government's not allowed to be involved in. Otherwise, when someone else is in control of the government, they still have all the power that we gave them when we were trying to do things for the right reasons, if that makes sense. So it's super complex because you make the same argument like with abortion and the death penalty and vaccines and masks and all this stuff, right? It's like, well, how much of this is okay for big government to be in control of? And that's kind of where I'm like, well, me and you could come to a decision about what's right and wrong and do the right thing. But if there's 100 people in the room, that would be a lot more difficult. There are thousands of people in big government, and you want them to come to the right decision now that we've given them a whole lot of power about what they're allowed to mandate people do or don't do with their bodies. Like, that's where it's kind of like, hey man, I gotta be honest, I think this is wrong, and I'm gonna do everything in my power to convince everybody I know not to. And that's it. Because when you give someone that power, it can swing the other way.
Right. Yeah.
So,
yeah, I mean, I think I go back to a pre-Roe v. Wade stance. That's me personally.
That's
all
fine.
that extreme if you want.
No,
but
I mean,
that's just the way I feel about it.
And it's correct, right? But it's like, that's...
And you know what? This may not be an issue, but it could be with the sheriff. Because you never know. With federal laws, and federal laws come down, at the end of the day, what I tell people is that the buck stops with the sheriff.
That's exactly right.
You are the one who enforces the law here.
Or doesn't.
Or doesn't. That's important.
Right.
And as a libertarian, I like that better.
Right.
Because one political party uses words like tax, coerce, confiscate, ban, censor. That's all one political party. That's the Democrat Party, folks. And I'm more of a libertarian myself. We look at Republicans. I'm more interested in saying, well, what don't I want to enforce?
Right. And that's honestly, that's why people have said to me a couple of times, like, hey, if you don't have any experience in government, like, why aren't you doing something smaller? Why don't you run for school board? Why don't you run for county commissioner?
Sure.
Et cetera. It's a city council. It's like, look, I'm the same reason I'm not running for state rep or Congress or something like that is. I have my moral foundation. I have my problem-solving framework. And I'm trying to influence what I can with that. And if I take those things and go into a room where I can be outvoted, then that potential is basically squandered if they gerrymander. You know what I mean? So it's like, look at what's going on at the state level right now. It's and both sides are trying to do it. You set up the jigsaw puzzle so it's in your favor. So that way, no matter what, I make sure that I outnumber the other guy. So if that's the game that's going on, I mean, depending on who wins, based on Supreme Court decisions and whatever, you can vote in 1,000 people that agree with you, and they can still get outvoted. Now there's a state or federal law that says, like, hey, you're not allowed to own a semi-automatic firearm here. It's like, well, guess what? The sheriff has the ability and the responsibility to say, yeah, you know what? That's not in the Constitution.
That's
so
right.
I'm not doing that here.
That's right.
Like, what are you gonna do? Send the National Guard? All right, I'm waiting.
That's fantastic. Yeah, and I mean, you're looking at like a political office, and we're talk politics. Like Governor Cooper, what do you think? Good or bad?
He's a turd.
Turd.
Yep.
All right. All right, Governor Cooper. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. Roy, in the off chance you're listening, don't like you, man. Sorry. Not sorry. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry.
Yeah, Governor Cooper. Yeah, we're not fans either. Somehow he won the last election, but I think that we're running out of time. You're probably gonna leave here. Oh yeah, I do want you to finish.
Yeah.
I want you to close with this very important distinction about sheriff's office.
Difference between, because I referred to it several times as the sheriff's department when it is the office of the sheriff. And this is important, and it falls, I learned new information, and the new information fell in line with my challenge the norm mentality, okay? An office is a person of elected authority and elected responsibility in what is a representative government, okay? And a department is someone who's appointed, and they don't have the same authority and responsibility because they're not elected. They answer to someone who is elected, right? So, with it being the office of the sheriff and not the sheriff's department. That means it's more important for whoever the sheriff is to be representative of regular people, because it's not an appointment that answers to an elected representative. So if it was going to be like, let's say a police department where the chief
answers to the mayor.
Yeah, he answers to the mayor,
Right.
he answers to the city manager, or however any individual county is set up, right? If that's the case, that the office of the sheriff is such a complex and detail-oriented law enforcement billet, if the demands are that high for it, then in my opinion, he should be answering to the county commissioners, because there has to be the check and balance of inserting representatives of the people into agencies like that. That's why the three-letter agencies answer to the president, right? That's why the state police answer to the governor, because you can work all the way up through the state troopers and not be, well, at the end of the day, you could be the best man ever and not be a regular Joe, because you've had the ability to arrest anyone that you've met for the last 20, 30, 40 years, however you did it. And not to say that I'm anti-police at all whatsoever. I actually had a Police Lives Matter sticker on the back of my truck until I got followed home summer of 2020. I actually had to do some I'm gonna not go directly home because this person's videotaping me in my rear view mirror type thing. So I was like, okay, this is now a threat to my family. I'm not gonna publicly display this because I have a kid on the way, and pregnant wife, all that stuff. So, but I'm very pro police. But when you're police for a long time, you look at things the way a cop does, right? Sure. And that's not the same as the way a regular person looks at problems. So when I say checks and balances, it's not against evil, and I don't want it to come across that way. I don't think that cops are bad. I am as pro police as you can get. But we need to have more than one opinion in the room to find the right decision.
Sure.
So, that's and that's kind of what I want to talk about with department versus office. It's like that. That's why I think it has to be a regular person in there. There has to be that representative public view in that local executive branch in order to make sure that everyone is on the same team and it doesn't create an us versus them like you see sometimes. Thankfully, not in this community, from what I can tell.
Right.
But,
yeah, that's really important. That's probably a good thing to close on. I do want to thank you for coming today.
Dude, thanks for the invite. I appreciate you reaching out, dude.
And one thing I want to ask the viewers to do, look, like I said, this is not an endorsement of Jake or any candidate. I mean, I'd like to get other candidates, county commissioners, even Colonel Thomas if we can, and talk about the same issues, just to make you guys aware of the importance of local elections, and especially the sheriff's office, especially county commissioners, district attorney. All that stuff is so important in a self-governing republic. So that being said, if you guys have any questions or comments, all right, about anything, if I were to do a follow-up interview with Jake, or anything that he could answer in the comments that we did not cover that's important to you, do so, please.
Yeah, I think that, if you don't mind, one of the most important things that someone who's running for office can do is put out their opinion on basically every subject before the election, right? Because if someone's truly going to represent you, they should think like you. They should solve problems like you. So, it shouldn't be kind of this bland, oh, he's a Republican, so I'm going to vote for him thing. Like we were talking about the school board, there's a guy who ran as a Republican even though he was a Democrat and then changed back to Democrat after he got elected, right? Yeah. So, whether or not you agree with my opinions on stuff, my goal is to be as transparent as possible during this election, because I don't think it's the responsibility of someone to get elected and then say, well, this seems to be what the people want, so I'm going to do it. When you get elected, it's your job to be you for the entire term. And then if the people like it, they'll vote for you again. But you have to maintain that integrity of what your platform was that you ran on, which is hey, this is me and this is how I think. So I think that what tends to happen is out of a sense of fairness, is people get in the office and then they say well, there's other opinions besides mine, so I probably ought to look at this a different way. It's well, now you've strayed from what people who voted for you for, and you're now making decisions to try to keep your job rather than to do your job the way you promised. And then that ends up in that cycle of, well, I can't trust politicians. Yeah. So, quite honestly, transparency is the name of the game for me. Whether you agree with me or not, whether you vote for me or not, my job as a candidate for an office is to say, hey, this is what I think on all of these subjects. If you agree with me, vote for me. And then at the end of the day, the democratic process of voting is what's going to make sure that the majority of the people get what they want. So,
Okay. Awesome. Hey, you guys know what to do. Comment, like, subscribe if I'm going to post this on YouTube, and let us know what you think. Thanks a lot. Go ahead, you can cut it.